Hello and welcome to Rathod Science Academy. Today in this session, we are going to see current affairs of yesterday's and today's newspaper. Okay, so before getting started, I want to make a small announcement. Already you know that we in Rathod Science Academy, we are going to launch new prelims cum mains batch tomorrow, right? And tomorrow's class timings is 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. And if you want to watch that free demo class on online, so please do download our app. The link of our app is there in description box. So if you download app and if you do register in our app, so you will be getting notification at least before 5 minutes of class starting, so that you can attend that class. And if you want to listen the class on offline, means you can come to our institute, which is above Vikas Book Center, 2nd and 3rd floor in Ashok Nagar. Okay, so there is no need of any registration or anything. So directly you can come and you can sit in the class, guys. Okay, now let us see the first important article. So title says Pamban Bridge and Engineering Marvel, says Prime Minister. So if you see any infrastructure projects which is in news, then it will be very, very important, guys, and you have to know about that project. So this is about Pamban Bridge. So topic is about Pamban Bridge. So from which subject you can say this? From GS paper 3 under economy. Not only that, from GS paper 1 under geography also you will be seeing that topic, right? So here what you have to know. So you have to know about history of this bridge. So actually it is a new bridge. That means before this we already have one old bridge. So you have to know about the details of this old bridge. So whenever you are doing some comparative study between the old and new, so you have to see about what are the features of this new project, how it is different from old project. It is very, very important. On this area, you will be expecting a question. And next one here is whenever we are going for development of any project, especially infrastructure project, you have to see about what are the important features about this. And you have to say about what are the advantages. So why we came up with that development project. So with that project, so what kind of advantages that we have. So you have to see that. Okay, so if you see this dimensions, then that is done. And you will be getting especially prelims based question from this area. And students who are writing this year prelims, 2025 prelims, you have to be known each and every fact related to this Pamban Bridge for sure. Okay, so keep star mark for this topic. And if you see the context, it says that our Prime Minister inaugurates India's first vertical lift sea bridge built over the Park Strait. Okay, so here there are again very, very important terms. Why? Because it is the first vertical lift sea bridge. The first important thing here is this Pamban Bridge is India's first vertical lift sea bridge. And where it is constructed? It is over Park Strait. Where is this Park Strait is located? It is between India and Sri Lanka. It is a maritime border between India and Sri Lanka, right? Okay. That means it is also important from your GS paper 2 under international relations. How we are going to improve trade, tourism in between India and Sri Lanka. Can you add this point? Yes. Okay. Because of the development of this Pamban Bridge, we are going to improve tourism and as well as trade and improvement of bilateral relations between India and Sri Lanka. So in this way, you have to use this kind of things when you are writing your mains. They will be not asking directly the question regarding this Pamban Bridge. Okay. So now let us see some facts regarding this Pamban Bridge. So now we came up with this new Pamban Bridge. So it is India's first vertical lift railway sea bridge. It is the vertical lift railway sea bridge. And actually I am telling it is new. That means earlier also we used to have something, right? That is called as old Pamban Bridge. And because of this new Pamban Bridge, we replaced 105 years. Remember the number. So with the number also UPSC can play the games. So it replaced 105-year-old Pamban Bridge. Why? Because we are going for enhancing of connectivity between India's mainland and as well as Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu. Okay, Indian mainland and Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu, and it is one of the state-of-art bridge, and we are going for improving of railway infrastructure and especially the important thing here is now we can go for 2 lanes, and that 2 lanes will be having electrified, so that we can also decrease the carbon footprint also. And if you see important details regarding this Pamban Bridge, so we are going for modernization this time. So in the recent years, this Pamban railway bridge has undergone significant upgrades. Especially we improved functionality, and as well as we are accommodating modern transport needs. We are going for vertical lift. So as in 2025, so a new vertical lift span was added. So because of this, now this Pamban Bridge is India's first vertical lift sea bridge. And next one here is faster train operations. So because of this upgrading of infrastructure of this bridge, now it will support double line electrification. That means 2 trains they can go simultaneously, and for these 2 trains also we will be having electrification. And because of this, it will also very much helpful for faster train operations between mainland of India and Rameshwaram Island. Okay, and next one here is we are also going to decrease the time. Okay, so because of this modernization of this old project, now we can increase the fastness, so that what are the time that is required to reach that place will be also be reduced. And why? What is the importance of this bridge? The first one here is, for much of his history, the bridge was only the link between Rameshwaram Island and mainland. So because of this, yes, whenever we are going for this kind of developmental projects, obviously it will be helpful for improving of transportation and improving of economic activities. That is nothing but trade. And next one is pilgrimage. So this bridge also plays a very important role in facilitating movement of this pilgrims who are traveling from Rameshwaram temple to this Rameshwaram temple. So that what happened, we can also improve tourism in this region. And next one here is during Sri Lankan Civil War. So this bridge also served as an important route for refugees who are seeking asylum in India. So that we can also use this bridge for improvement of diplomatic relations with Sri Lanka. Okay, so these are the things that you have to see. And in today's international edition of Hindu, I saw this image. So actually this image is about one important river that is called as River Tel. That is nothing but TEL, the River Tel. So here, whenever you are seeing any river which is there in the newspaper or even some images which are showing that, so there is a high tendency of getting question regarding that river. So as you all know that, in which subject you will be saying that? About rivers. So it is about River Tel, right? So normally if you see these rivers, which comes under chapter of drainage system, okay, which is there in your GS paper 1, especially in Indian geography. And in this drainage system, we have how many types of river systems? 2. Himalayan river system. Next one is Peninsular river system. In Himalayan, you will be studying about only 3 rivers. What are they? Indus, River Ganga and River Brahmaputra. In Peninsular, again 2 types. East flowing rivers, west flowing rivers, right? So actually this River Tel is one of the important tributary of which river? River Mahanadi. So River Mahanadi comes under this in Himalayan or Peninsular, and that too east flowing river, because this Mahanadi which flows towards east and it will be joining BOB, Bay of Bengal. So what you have to see, I clearly said in our basic classes that how you have to make notes for this drainage system chapter, right? I said you have to take one A4 size paper and you have to divide that paper into 5 blocks, and in one area you have to write about what is the name of that river, and next you have to see where this origin of this river happened and some left bank tributaries or right bank tributaries, or else if there are any important dams which are constructed over that river, you have to write that, and you have to say about in how many states it is flowing also, and you have to write which states. So all those things that we discussed in our basic classes, right? So here now we have to see about this River Tel. So as you all know that River Tel is one of the important tributary of which river? River Mahanadi. And where this River Tel originates? That originates in Kalahandi district of Odisha. in Kalahandi district of Odisha. So this river will be originating, and it is one of the major tributary of Mahanadi river. And this river plays a very important role in supporting agriculture via irrigation, and even it will be helpful for sustenance of livelihoods of people who are present in this region. Okay, if you see this image, it is a basin of river Mahanadi. Okay, so here you can see this is river Mahanadi, right? So here which are the tributaries which are coming and joining this river? So here we have Sionath, here we have Jonk, here we have Hastio, here we have river Mand, river Ib, and here somewhere you can see river Tel. Okay, this is the river Tel. So whenever we are studying about river Mahanadi like this, you will be studying which are the left bank tributaries and which are the right bank tributaries. And this river Tel is right bank, because if you see the movement of this river, it will be flowing in this way, right? It is flowing here and it is forming delta here. So whenever it is moving like this, it is a right hand side, it is a left hand side. So right hand side tributaries are called as right bank tributaries, and left side tributaries are called as left bank tributaries. And this river Tel comes under right bank tributary of river Mahanadi. So you have to remember like this. And now let us see the next article. Title says only 12% of High Court judges disclosed assets, data show. Okay, so if you see this infographic which says that judges of only 6 high courts have declared their assets on court websites. So in Chhattisgarh, the number of judges who declared assets was 1, and current strength is 16. Out of 16 judges in Chhattisgarh High Court, only 1 judge, he disclosed his assets. And in Himachal Pradesh, 12 judges are there. Out of that, 11 judges, that means high percentage of judges who proposed there or who disclosed their assets is there in this state of Himachal Pradesh. And if you see in Madras High Court, there are 65 judges are there, but out of that, only 5 disclosed their assets. In Punjab and Haryana, 53 judges, but only 30 disclosed their assets. And in Delhi, 38, only 7 disclosed. And in Kerala, 44 were there, 41 disclosed. So here in overall India, so only 12% of High Court judges, they disclosed their assets on websites of that so-and-so court. Okay, so why this issue is in news? So you know that recently in the transfer of judge, there is some issue regarding this burning of currency which had been found in that so-and-so home of that so-and-so judge, right? So because of this, now it is very much serious issue. So judges have to disclose their assets, their properties, so that we can increase accountability and transparency in our judiciary system. Okay, so from which subject you can see about this? You can say this topic from judiciary. The judiciary comes under which subject? GS paper 2 under polity. So what you have to see here? So if you see the judicial system in India, we have Supreme Court, it is a top court. Next one is High Court, and next one is district courts or subordinate courts, right? So now this article is talking about HCs, judges of High Court. Okay, so here this article is saying that judges have to disclose. Judges have to disclose the details about their assets. And where they have to disclose their assets? In that so-and-so respective court websites. Okay, so how much percentage of the High Court judges now disclosed their properties or assets? Only 12%. So is that an issue or not? Yes. Okay, so now this article is saying that yes, only 12% of judges, they disclose their assets. So what are the issues here? And you have to see what are the measures or what is the way forward that we have to take so that we can increase the disclosure of assets of this High Court judges. So why we need to disclose their assets? Because we have to control corruption. First thing here is we have to control corruption. Next thing, why we want to disclose them? To increase transparency and accountability. And not only that, the third one here is to increase public trust. And next one here is to increase credibility of judiciary. Credibility of judiciary. So all these 4 points are very, very important. So as you all know that recently in one case of transfer of High Court judge, so in that house of that so-and-so judge itself, they find that currency notes had been burned. So whenever that kind of incidents are happening, then what happens in the people's perception? They will think that there is increasing of corruption. There is no proper judiciary, and even they are not getting proper justice also, because the judge will be aligned towards the people who will give the corruption, right? So if you want to eliminate all those things, this step is right or not? Yes. So that's the thing that you have to think about. And just here you have to do this work. That is, what are the issues and what is the way forward, or what are the measures can be taken. So now let us see this article. So a recent analysis revealed that only 12.35% of judges in India's 25 high courts have opted to disclose their assets and liabilities through official online website. So we are not only asking about their asset, even liabilities. Liabilities mean nothing but the debt they are having. So they have to disclose their assets and assets liabilities through the official online platforms. So if you see some important details, what you have to learn, the thing that you have to learn is there is a contrast in asset disclosure rates across different high courts. So I shown you one table format, right? When I showed you about the title of that so-and-so article, I showed you some data point. In that data, you find that some courts, they disclosed well. For example, Himachal Pradesh, out of 12 judges, 11 judges disclosed. In Kerala, 44 out of 44 judges, 41 disclosed. But in some other courts like Madras, so very, very less. And even Punjab and Haryana also very less. That means, can you see disparities between one court to another court? So if you are moving from one court to another court, so the number of judges who disclosed is different. That is the one point that you can identify. That means, can we ensure transparency in all high courts? If some high courts are ensuring the good disclosure, some high courts are not ensuring, then we can say that throughout our country we have this transparency. No, this is the one important question that we have to see. Why there is disparity? So if disparity is happening, how it is going to affect transparency in our country? And this one here is because of this disparity. For example, just now I showed you that infographic. So I think something will be running in your back of your mind that why this difference is happening. Yes or no? That means, can we ensure public trust? No, public trust will be getting eroded if this kind of data is disclosed into the public, right? So why? Because of recent incident of Justice Verma. Because of this, now we are saying that we need to have increase transparency and accountability in this judicial system. And if you see, even the Supreme Court also, the decision which is taken, decision by all these 33 Supreme Court judges is to publicly disclose their assets could be seen as a fundamental step towards rebuilding trust. So not only now they are asking about the high courts to disclose about their assets and liabilities, but even Supreme Court itself took this step. So whenever Supreme Court, which is a higher court in our country, that is the topmost court in our country, is doing this, means obviously what happens? At least people will start trusting this judiciary. Okay, next one here is there is also sharp decline in asset declaration of judges in Delhi High Court from 29 out of 35 judges in 2018 to 7 out of 38 today. So if you take example of just Delhi High Court, if you see in 2018, out of 35 judges in that Delhi High Court, at that time 29 already disclosed, but they will be not permanent, right? So they will be getting like resign, or sometimes they will be going for completion of their tenure, like that. So now out of 38 judges, now only 7 judges, they are disclosing their assets publicly. That means we can understand that there is lack of transparency, and especially judges, they are not coming forward to disclose their assets. There is a resistance which is showing from there itself. And next one here is, this article is saying that we have to come up with the proper recommendations. Who have to do these recommendations? That is parliamentary standing committee mandatorily. That means for 100% sure, if you are the judge of High Court or if you are judge of Supreme Court, you have to disclose the assets and assets liability. So we need to get a mandatory annual property declaration for sure, so that we can enhance accountability and transparency in this judiciary. So that is the thing that is given here. And now let us see the next article. Title says migrant workers subjected to long working hours, says TN Planning Commission study. Okay, so what is this topic is about? It is about migrant workers. So keyword is migrant workers. Okay, so till now, which topics that you made the notes? Poverty you did about education. Next, manual scavenger, caste discrimination. Next, malnutrition, 5 topics. Child trafficking and child labor. Yes. So till now you did about the work regarding 7 to 8 topics, right? So the next topic is migration, because in 2023 and 2024, so many questions they got from this migration, right? So in which subject you will be seeing about this migration, guys? From GS paper 1 under geography. In geography, especially in this human and economic geography, you will be studying about this migration, right? And actually this migration is increasing day by day, yes or no? If you take in India, so especially which kind of migration is happening? Rural to urban migration is happening. And if you see internationally, from India to other countries, people are going, right? To which countries they are going? Especially for US or like West Asian countries. Why people are moving towards US? For getting of higher education or to do the job. But why the people are going towards West Asia? Especially to work in oil fields and oil rigs, right? Okay. So here you have to see about what is migration. What is the meaning of migration? First you have to know meaning of migration. Next you have to see about types of migration. So in these types you have to divide it into international migration and as well as domestic migration. Domestic means nothing but within India. If you are shifting from Hyderabad to AP or Hyderabad to Delhi, Hyderabad to Bangalore, like that, it is called as internal. That is nothing but domestic migration. And apart from that, you have to see what are the factors that are responsible for migration. So how many factors we have? 2 factors. Pull factors and next one is push factors. Pull factors means if you are present in that location, what factors that is pushing you out. Pulling factor means nothing but how it is attracting. Okay, pulling factor is nothing but attracting factors and pushing is that throwing out. You have to see what are those pull factors and what are those push factors. And next you have to collect data. Data means nothing but you have to collect data individually for domestic migration and next one is international migration. Okay, and whenever you're covering data of international migration, you have to even collect data of remittances. Okay, so here migration is happening good because their standard of living is improving, so that they'll be getting more income, they'll be getting job opportunities, good facilities of education, healthcare, everything. It's good. But even though because of migration, people are facing lot of challenges. Yes or no? Yes. You have to note about what are the challenges. So this article is talking about this challenges which is faced by this migrant workers. And who did this study? Tamil Nadu's Planning Commission. So if you are writing or collecting the data or making notes of migrant workers in India, now this article you can use. So recently Tamil Nadu Planning Commission gave the recommendations or study. You have to write down the highlights of the study. Sorry. Normally, what will be the challenges of these migrants? So do they get work on every day? No. No daily employment? Yes. And next one is, if they are working in certain site, they can make any contract? No, right? So there is no contract based work. And even wages will be low or high. Wages will be low. And sometimes there will be also exploitation of labor. And even there will be harsh working conditions. harsh working conditions, and they have to even work for long hours compared to that of minimum hours, right? So these are some challenges they will face. So I have to write about challenges detailing along with the substantiation, like examples and data. So if you see this article, what it is saying that recent study by State Planning Commission of Tamil Nadu brought into light about challenges faced by this migrant workers, particularly in Chennai region. So you have to write this case study in Chennai region according to the study done by Tamil Nadu State Planning Commission. Okay, like that. So first one here is 53% of migrant workers, they are working long hours. So normally how many hours they will be working? 8 hours. So if they are working more than 8, that will be long working hours. And they said that more than 12 hours they are working. Around 53% of workers. And this one is they are working without any contracts. So around 84% of migrant workers are working without having any contracts, and even they are having very poor living conditions. They don't have proper adequate housing, no proper sanitation, and actually whatever the monthly income they are getting, so about 15% of their income they are spending on giving of rent only. Okay, and next one here is the average monthly earnings of this migrant worker will be around 15,000, like around 16,000 marginally. And next one here is what happens. So whenever the people who are going outside and they are working for the less money, will they send back good amount of money? No. So earlier what happens, so if they are having like 10,000 rupees per month means they will be spending some amount, right? So if they are working for now 8,000 or 7,000, what happens? Will they send the same amount of money back? No. So actually there is decreasing of remittances also. This is also one important problem they find. And this one is highest earnings are there in this construction workers, especially migrant people who are working in this construction sites. They are getting good amount of income, that is around 18,696 rupees per month compared to that of others. And this one is even, do they have any guarantees of health benefits? No. So because of this, there is also health and safety concerns that are associated with this migrant employment in this labor intensive sectors. So these are some important problems they are find out. They are find in this Chennai region. So you have to make note of the data regarding migration for sure, guys. And let us see the next question. Sorry, next article. Semaglutide reduces cardiovascular event risk in diabetes patients, says one study. So actually it is one new drug. So if you are seeing any new drug or any new species or anything in news, that will be very important, right? So here it is, semaglutide reduces cardiovascular event risk in diabetes patients. So actually what is this diabetes? Diabetes is nothing but normally in Telugu or in Telugu states, in normal things we call it as sugar, right? Sugar uchindi, sugar disease. Okay, so the keyword here is diabetes mellitus. Diabetes is nothing but the condition where there is increased blood glucose level. There is increased blood glucose level in your blood. Whenever there is increased glucose level, that is called as diabetes mellitus. So actually, which is a hormone important? Insulin. So insulin is a hormone which is produced by pancreas. What it does is, what are the food that you will take? What are the food that you will take? That food will be getting metabolized, everything, right? So what happens, the output here is you will be getting glucose. So this glucose is entering into your blood. So this insulin will convert this blood glucose level into glucagon. So it is nothing but storage form of your glucose in your body. So if there is no insulin, if there is very less insulin production, if there is no insulin production in your body, then this excess glucose in your blood is converted to glucagon? No. So this condition is called as diabetes mellitus. So diabetes mellitus is nothing but no or less production of insulin in your body. There is also one more condition here. One more condition is insulin is produced in your body, but your cells will be getting insulin resistance. Okay, so here diabetes mellitus is nothing but it is no production or less production or insulin resistance. And in this diabetes mellitus we have different types. We have type 1 diabetes mellitus, we have type 2 diabetes mellitus, and next one is gestational. We have gestational diabetes mellitus. So type 1 diabetes mellitus is nothing but in this condition there is less or no production of insulin. So in type 1 there is less production or no production of insulin. And in this type 2 what happens? Insulin is produced. Insulin will be there in good amounts in your body, but cell will be getting insulin resistance. So insulin resistance happens in this type 2. And gestational diabetes mellitus is nothing but during pregnancy. Especially in women, during pregnancy, what happens? There is increasing of blood sugar level because of excess eating. Okay, so there is a perception that yes, I am bearing child in my womb, so I have to eat for 2 enough. So like that, with that perception, women will be start eating more, or even during this time because of excess and because of more production of different hormones in the body also, they will be getting food cravings. So because of that also they will be eating more. So because of that, in this time normally there will be the increased blood sugar level, that is called as gestational diabetes mellitus. And once after delivery is done, after giving birth to the baby, then it will be coming to the normal. But sometimes around 2% of people, they will be also continuing with this diabetes even after the delivery also. So they have to be very cautious. Okay, so here this article is saying that, so we came up with one new drug, that is semaglutide, and it is very, very essential for maintaining of diabetes. So if you see this first paragraph itself, it is saying that, I'll zoom it out so that you can see. Diabetes management should not be focused narrowly on blood sugar levels, but we have to focus on concurrently work at protecting cardiac and renal health also. Says recent study that found daily oral semaglutide, which is an antibiotic medication used for this type 2 diabetes mellitus. It is an anti-obesity medication which is used for long-term weight management. That could also cut the risk of heart attacks, strokes and cardiovascular death by 14%. So normally if you are getting this diabetes mellitus, if you go to any hospital, especially what they'll give, they will give the drugs to manage your blood sugar level. But will they focus on this cardiac events? So what happens in this case of diabetes is whenever there is increasing of your blood sugar level, it will be also affecting your other organs. So have you ever heard, so if a diabetic patient is getting any cuts or any injury, so it will be covered 100% recovery? No, it will lead to more infections, right? So here because of increasing of blood sugar level, so it will be having impact on other body organs. So which organs will be getting affected? Your kidneys and heart first. So this article is saying that especially diabetes management is not only controlling sugar level, so we have to also control decreasing of cardiac risk and as well as renal risk also. So for that, one drug here is, what is this drug name? Semaglutide. Okay, so this semaglutide which can be used in this diabetes patients so that we can control blood sugar level, and also it will be decreasing the risk of cardiac arrest. Okay, so see that once. And there is one article here, it is about our WAC amendment bill. Already we discussed that very clearly and we are not going to see that. So just revise that topic once. And next I will discuss this topic. It is about health and sanitation as the pillars of healthy India. So actually in our today's newspaper, so there are many articles regarding health. And this health is part of your GS paper under governance directly. And why there are many articles regarding this health today is, so today, April 7th, we will be celebrating this day as World's Health Day. Okay, so what are the points which are given here? Try to write all these things. And regarding health, I gave you the work, that is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. I said about what are the schemes, which are implemented under that, you have to make the list. Have you done this? If you have done this, all we will be discussing here. So what are the missions that we have? We are focusing on improvement of health of the people. We have Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we have Jal Jeevan Mission, and we have Ayushman Bharat. Okay, and we're also focusing on improving of sanitation by ODF, that is nothing but Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So like that, lots of the schemes you are focusing on this. So now let us see this article clearly. So this article is saying that on this World Health Day, which is celebrated on April 7th, India demonstrates a crucial lesson in public health, that is inseparable nature of health and sanitation. So if you're focusing on health only, means, is it correct? No. So we have to focus on both sanitation and health together, because those two components are inseparable. We can't separate. So if you're living in sanitation or well sanitated environment, then only your health will be good. If you're not living in proper sanited area, if you're not following proper sanitation, then can you ensure the proper health? No. For example, if you're taking good boiled and cooled water, then is that water is having contamination? No. So if you're taking directly contaminated water, and what happens? That so and so microorganisms will enter into your body, and that will start showing the symptoms. You'll be getting disease, right? That is the thing which mainly said here. So health and sanitation, you are inseparable. So if you see our Prime Minister, that is Narendra Modi, under his leadership from 2014 onwards, India had launched transformative initiatives, and these initiatives are focusing on both sanitation as well as clean water, clean health, so that what happened, overall public health well-being is improving. So as if you see some important examples here, so India's sanitation as well as water initiatives, which mainly says about public health cannot be compartmentalized, and sanitation health, we have to see them interlinked so that we can achieve improvements in well-being. So regarding this sanitation and as well as water, what are the schemes came up by the government? There is Jal Jeevan Mission and as well as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Okay, and this one here is, if you see about this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the substantial decline in diarrheal death. So because before this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan implementation, so people used to go for ODF, that is open defecation, right? That means they are going for defecating of feces, not in washrooms. It is in the open places. So because of this, what happens? Normally diarrhea, which is mainly caused by contamination of food and contamination of water, right? So here, because of this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, what we did? We went for building of washrooms. That is nothing but toilets in the houses, especially even in the rural areas also. Government provides certain amount to the people so that they started building of their washrooms. So because of this, we are trying to bring some behavioral change in the people towards sanitation. So because of this, what happened? A drastical decline of diarrheal deaths, which happened. That means we can understand that whenever the change in the behavior of the people is happening towards sanitation, obviously their health will be in a good state. And next one is, we are also focusing on infrastructure, especially under this Jal Jeevan Mission, government is providing water through functional tap. They have to open the tap so that the water will be coming. So that will there be the sanitation? Yes. And next one here is, we are also focusing on improvement of or achieving of our sustainable development goals by 2030. So because of this Swachh Bharat mission, it will be very much helpful for achieving of our global sustainable development goals. For example, improving of sanitation, improving of health, etc. And next one here is, it will be also very much helpful for time saving of people. Whenever we are focusing on sustainable developments, whenever we are focusing on especially sanitation, what happens? So what are the amount that we'll spend on our health will be obviously decreased. That is nothing but staying in the hospitals and spending a lot of money. Everything will be getting saved. And this one is, women also plays a very, very important role in sanitation. Yes or no? So as you all know that one famous proverb will be there in the Telugu. Like, if women in the house is healthy, women in house is accountable, then every family will be getting accountable, right? If woman is not sweeping around her house, then what happens? Increasing of mosquitoes, increasing of house flies, increasing of dirt, increasing of diseases in that family, right? So here, women plays a very, very important role in this health innovation, especially women leading initiatives in sanitation management we are focusing, and even we are focusing on empowerment of female, and because of this what happening, there is improvement of community health altogether. And next one here is this article is saying that we have to focus on interministerial collaboration. For example, we have Ministry of Health and Women, right? So Ministry of Health and Women is there. So if this ministry only taking efforts, will we achieve all the achievements? Will we achieve all the objectives? No. So we need to get help from other departments also, not only health. Even we have Ministry of Jal Shakti. So Ministry of Jal Shakti will be, it is related to water. So if health and Jal Shakti ministry are coming together and they are working together, means we can increase sanitation. And even regarding maintenance of sanitation, maintenance of solid waste management in the urban areas and rural areas will be taken by Ministry of Panchayats and Ministry of Urban Affairs. So if these ministries are not collaborating with this Ministry of Health and Development, can we ensure 100% of objectives? No. So whatever the ministries which are there, so we need to have the proper collaboration between all the ministries so that we can go for improvements in sustainable health in our country. That is the thing which mainly said here. And now let us see the next article. It is also related to our health only. Bridging gaps, building resilience. Very, very important topic. And again, it is about health from GS paper 2. And there is a lot of data which is given here. Especially see this first paragraph, guys. After this class, see this first paragraph and write down the data. So this article is saying that World Health Day taking place on April 7th each year. So this day which serves as a global call to action for equitable and accessible healthcare worldwide. So actually this year, what is the theme? The theme here is healthy beginnings, hopeful futures. So it is saying that, yes, we have to focus on maternal, that is nothing but mother, and as well as newborn health, particularly in India. So why? We have around 1.4 billion people in our country. So do everyone is getting proper healthcare services? No. So because of this, especially this year, they want to focus on maternal and newborn health. So this article is saying that we have to focus on equitable healthcare access. Equitable healthcare access is nothing but we have rural areas and we have urban areas. Who will get proper healthcare services? The people who are staying in these urban areas will be getting services. But what about these people? Rural areas, they won't get proper healthcare services, right? And even we studied one article in the recent days that, so even whatever the primary healthcare centers are there, so people will be not going to that. They'll be going to other district hospitals, right? So here that means because of lack of infrastructure in these areas and because of community people who are working there, right? So here this article is saying that we have to recognize what are the healthcare inequities or inequalities that are present between urban areas and rural areas, and we have to try to sort it out first. And we have to focus on resources. So if resources are not there, can we expect the development in that region? No. So we have to focus on giving of proper resources also. And this one is we have to focus on preventive healthcare. So actually now whatever the treatment that we are getting in our hospitals, so if you get diseases, then only you will be getting treatment for that disease. So if you're not getting that disease and if you go and if you ask about that disease, will you get the treatment for that? They will be giving reply like, you didn't get the disease, why you are bothering about that? Yes or no? So now we have to focus on this preventive healthcare. So preventive healthcare is nothing but how can we prevent getting disease? So we have to focus on proper sanitation. Next one is vaccines are available, right? That means we have to focus on vaccines and awareness about the vaccines in the people so that we can focus on preventive healthcare. And especially in certain seasons, normally in this monsoon season, whenever the rainfall starts, there will be spreading of waterborne diseases, right? So that time government can take some measures for increasing of awareness and as well as providing of certain vaccines, providing of certain medicines, okay, to boost immunity in the people. So if you're taking all those steps, can we control the disease spread? Yes, that is the thing that we have to focus now. And next one here is digital infrastructure investment. So nowadays, if you go to hospital, so everything they will be doing, earlier they used to do in everything in the paper format and they'll be having record room. So in that record room, there are lots and lots of bundles of old files they used to be there. So I don't know whether you know this or not, but earlier we used to have this papers only, paperwork. But now if you go to any hospital, they are just asking you details and they are typing in the computer and they will be giving you the print, right? And after once a doctor prescription is given, means that prescription also will be scanned and will be attached in that. That means especially this kind of thing which is seen in urban areas or rural areas, urban areas. That means now in rural areas also we have to shift towards digital infrastructure. And if you're having digital infrastructure, if a person who can't go to hospital, can he get consultation on online, for example telemedicine, right? So we have to go for improvement of digital infrastructure and investments in our country. And even we have to focus on global collaboration. So as you all know that lots of changes happening in India, but if you're comparing with other countries, India is having very slow rate of development. That means, can we have a chance of learning from other countries? Yes. So we have to learn from other countries who are doing best in their countries. For example, if you see the Cuba is very, very small country, but it serves doctors for the world. So in that way, so which country is doing good in this health sector, we can learn from that country. That is the thing which mainly said. And not only focusing on the physical health, like what is happening wrong with your body organs, but even you have to focus on the mental health. What is the mental status of your thing, whether there is anxiety or depression or Alzheimer's or bipolar disorder, whatever it may be, you have to focus on even mental health also. So actually the investments which is spent in this mental health is very, very less in India. So now we have to increase our spending in this. Okay, so here there is also one study, that is NIMHANS. NIMHANS study is saying that 14% of Indians they face mental health challenges. So which is underscores the need for public policy, and we have to focus on especially mental health awareness and as well as service accessibility. And we have to integrate mental health care to the broader health system. Okay, and even we have to balance public health investments, and we have to even come up with the medicines or anything regarding our environmental challenges also. So all these things are very important. And now let us see the next article. It is about, can the US president serve a third term? So actually it is in news, and if you see this, just it is more than enough case. So actually there is one provision in US that is called as 22nd Amendment. So this 22nd Amendment of US Constitution, when they came up in year 1951. So actually this 22nd Amendment which says that no, US presidents, they can elected only for 2 terms. Okay. But before this there was a provision. Okay. So if you ask me who are the people who elected for more terms is, no, not that person, I'll tell you. Yes, here in this paragraph you can see. So 22nd Amendment to US Constitution ratified in 1951. It limits US President to 2 elected terms. It was brought in response. Why? Because one person called as Franklin D. Roosevelt unprecedented 4-term presidency. So after this person who did 4 times the presidency between 1933 to 1945, which broke the 2-term unwritten precedent set by nation's first president, that is George Washington. So George Washington was the first nation's president, and he said this thing like, so we have to go for only 2 terms only. Okay, who voluntarily declined the 3rd term in 1976. In 1796 itself, this first president of US said that no, one person should do president only for 2 terms, and even he had chance for the 3rd term also, but at that time he declined that voluntarily. But this was broken by this person D. Roosevelt, and he did presidentship for the 4 terms, that is from 1933 to 1945, and later on in 1951 they came up with this 22nd Amendment, so that now strictly it says that not more than 2 terms. Okay, so that is the thing that you have to see here. And if you see in India, do we have that kind of framework? So unlike US presidential framework, India's parliamentary system imposes no term limits on its prime minister, and the tenure depends upon the retaining of Lok Sabha's confidence. If they are passing this no confidence motion, then what happens? The government will fall. Okay, that's the thing that you have to see, guys. And you have to remember about this 22nd Amendment of US Constitution. What is it? It is about limiting of tenure of US President. And next article, see here. Why were students protesting over Kancha Gachibowli? So actually this article is about state of Telangana. So actually this article, it is about HCU, that is Hyderabad Central University. So why it is in news? Because, so from this Hyderabad Central University, now the present government wants to take around 400 acres of land for non-teaching purpose, that is for developmental thing, for especially developing of IT sector, they want to take 400 acres. So because of this issue which is going on. So here if you see this gist, it says that the students of University of Hyderabad at Gachibowli have been protesting ever since new auction of 400-acre land known as Kancha Gachibowli within campus premises. So within campus premises itself, they want to take 400 acres of land. So because of this now, students are doing protest. Students are stating that this land which is a part of university and we are not going to give this to government. And actually this land which had been undisturbed from past 20 years onwards, and land is very much rich for its biodiversity, especially flora and as well as fauna we can see. And actually in that so-and-so university also we have some water bodies. So already you know that whenever we are having water bodies, they will attract migratory birds, migratory species. So for all this, it is very, very important how government can take away this land. So this is the issue which is going on, guys. And now let us see the next article. Title says India and Sri Lanka signed 7 MOUs, enhanced ties in defense and as well as energy. And this article is important from your GS paper 2 under international relations. Let us see those important points. So actually India and Sri Lanka, they inked 7 MOUs including one on defense cooperation. So if the first one here is we want to improve the strengthening of defense ties, especially to improve cooperation security related issues. And next we want to improve military collaboration, intelligence sharing and as well as joint exercise and training initiatives. And we are also focusing on improving of energy cooperation as well. So these are the commitments they came up to develop an energy grid connection so that we will be ensuring that there is sharing of energy and it will be helpful for energy security as well. And as far as we are focusing on economic support also. So actually we are decreasing loan interest rates so that we want to convert that loans into grants so that it will be helpful for Sri Lanka. Okay. And next we are also focusing on health sector. And we are focusing on improvement of cultural diplomacy through religious ties, and even we are focusing on improvement of regional collaboration, cooperation as well. And apart from this, there is one more article, that is Sri Lanka's Tamil political leaders, they urge India to ban bottom trawling. So just see about what is this bottom trawling and what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and what is the ecologically, what are the negative things which are happening because of this bottom trawling. See this. Okay, so these are some important topics that